Hey guys, this is Amy from Homestead DNA, and I wanted to bring you along today while I planted out these peppers. There's a couple things that you want to keep in mind when you're planting out peppers, and I thought I'd talk to you about them a little bit before I got them in the ground. So a little bit of background on these peppers. We started them about 8 weeks ago in smaller pots, and about, let's say 5-6 weeks in, we planted them up so that they'd have larger pots. They were under grow lights for 16 hours a day, and once a week we would fertilize them with a diluted fish emulsion. So they've been growing along great. We didn't have any issues with aphids. We had that problem last year. The only struggle we had with these was last week. We had them outside as they were hardening off, and we were gone at a meeting, and a big, horrible, windy, like rainstorm came through, and it pummeled these. Thankfully, we didn't have any broken stems. We saw some damage to the leaves, and some of the soil got washed away from the roots, but I wasn't too worried about them. So I'm really happy with these. Sometimes peppers can be kind of tricky to get started. It's one of those things that you have to start really early in the season, and a lot of times they are really slow to germinate. What we do to help that is we start them on a heat mat, and that's really good for helping those seeds germinate a bit faster. So an important thing to think about when you're planting out your peppers is waiting until it is warm enough outside. We start to get, the spring weather and warm days, and it's sunny and beautiful, and you want to be out there, and there's lots of other things that you can be planting. But peppers is one of those things that really needs consistent hot days. So we had our last frost last Monday, a week ago, and we're normally not even able to plant peppers out quite this early, but we've got lots of warm days ahead. We've looked into our 10-day forecast, and the key thing that I look for when I know it's time to plant out peppers is that there's no nights under 50. They really need to have those 50 or higher days and nights, and so that's something that's really important. They can survive that. They'll survive down into the 40s, into the 30s even, not below freezing, but they can survive that, but it'll really stunt and slow down their growth. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. The next thing to think about is where you're going to plant your peppers. So as you can see behind me, we have our cattle panel trellis. I'll show you down the row. So we've already done some work to get this ready. We've got our permeable lead fabric on the bottom. I've already run my drip tape, and these cattle panels are held up by T-posts. I've got 2 running the length of this, and then I've got my holes burned into the fabric about every 12 inches. You can go further apart than that, but because we're using the trellis and we're going to have them guided up there, I like to have them about 12 inches apart. And peppers are something that don't mind being a little bit crowded. You can even plant them in pots together, plant a couple of these together in pots, and you don't have to use a trellis. This is just what we're doing. We've done years where we've kind of done like the corral method, where we've taken stakes around a raised bed that are filled with peppers, and we just ran string around it to keep them together. So just think about if you're wanting to have just a single or a couple peppers in a pot, have them running down the row. You don't have to have any kind of trellising system at all. We just like this because it keeps the plants upright, keeps them off the ground, and those fruits that come off the peppers that come off of these can sometimes be really big and really weigh on the plant, so this keeps them from breaking and snapping off. The next thing I like to talk about is pinching. So you can see here, that's a pretty tall pepper plant. And what you can do, you can take this, I don't even know if you can see that little node right above that leaf right there. You could take these and pinch them. So when you do that, you're telling the plant to send up new shoots. We are choosing not to do that this year. You would want to do that if you want to have like a bushier plant. Because we're training these up the trellis, we're going to let them go. And the reason for doing that is it takes a little bit longer for the plant to set fruit if you're pinching your plants. You would want to do that if, say, you're planting just one pepper in a pot and you want it to get nice and bushy and fill out the whole plant. Go ahead and pinch that. And you can even pinch it a couple times as those new shoots come off. But we're choosing not to do that. And then the second thing that you want to look at when you're planting your peppers is to decide whether or not you want to keep your flowers. Do you see that flower? That flower has actually been open for several days, and there's many more little buds on there. So the thought process behind pinching your flowers off before you plant them is that you're telling the plant not to put energy into creating fruit yet. You want it to create a strong root system. You want it to keep growing. You want a nice big strong plant. So that's a good thing to do. It's good to pinch off your flowers if you have a really long growing season and you've got extra time to let those peppers form. Or if, sorry, just checking that guy out. This guy's been open for so long, I've been shaking him to get the pollen to go in. Pick your flowers if you want to give that plant extra time to grow, extra time to build its root system. We're choosing not to pull our flowers because those flowers are potential peppers. So that means that we could actually really early in the season have peppers come on because we do have so many of these plants that have the flowers on them. I also feel that this plant's going to be just fine going ahead and creating flowers and producing fruit because we've done so much to set this up for success. These plants are not going to have any weeds. They're going to have regular watering. They're being put in soil that has already had amendments added to it. So all the stress that a wild pepper could experience, this plant is not going to experience. This plant is going to have the best life right here. So we're choosing to leave the flowers on the plants and let them do what they want to do so that we can go ahead and get fruit earlier. We're also not too worried about how big each of these plants get because I have a whole row of peppers that we're putting in, and I've got 25 pepper plants. I'm going to have more peppers than I know what to do with. So I'm perfectly fine with these plants possibly not being as big or as strong as they possibly could be just because I didn't pull off those flowers. So a couple things to think about. It's kind of controversial. People always say to pick your flowers. They always say to pinch your pepper plants. We're not doing either of those this year, and we haven't always done that in the past. It's always kind of been 50-50, but we're confident with what we're doing. And even if it doesn't work out, it's okay because we learned something from it. So these plants are gorgeous right now. I've got more plants than I can even plant in the spots allotted, and that's something that we commonly do when we're starting seeds early. I normally germinate about twice as many seeds as I know I'll have room for, and then when it comes time to potting out, I'll pull out just the strongest ones. And so now I've got I think like 36 plants right here and only 25 spots for peppers. So I'll be able to go through and pull out the very best looking ones and put them in. In case you're curious what we're doing, we've got, let me show you, cubanelle, bunch of bell peppers, jalapeno, serrano, and jalapeno, which is a jalapeno that is not spicy, which is the first time for me. So I'm excited for that. We mainly use bell peppers, so I've got about 3 times the amount of bell peppers as the other stuff. So we're gonna get these in the ground and get them watered in, and they'll be able to start enjoying life on the outside. All right, so all those peppers are in, all the way down the row. Let me take you down and I'll show you. A little messy with the extra dirt right now, but that's okay. As you can see, I was using my Hori Hori. It's a pretty neat multi-surface tool. It's essentially a spade, but it also has a serrated edge and a sharp edge, as well as an extra place to like cut twine and things like that. This has been really useful for getting into these holes and loosening up the dirt. We've already cultivated the dirt before we put on the woven fabric, but this just makes planting super quick and super simple. So all that's left to do with these guys tonight is water them in. Even though we have the drip line, I like to wait a few days after planting something out before I start using it. I'll go ahead and use the hose and water things in so it's all nice and settled before I start using the drip line. I'm gonna give it maybe 4 days to a week, just depending on how warm and how fast growing those plants are. So there you go. Well, thanks for coming along with me today while I get all of these peppers planted out. It's pretty exciting because peppers are one of the things that you invest so much time in, especially if you're seed starting. And it is just nice to know that they're in the ground and they're ready to start producing and start growing. And they're out of my office, out of my house, out of the grow lights. I don't have to worry about keeping them alive in there anymore. They can do their thing out here. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'd love to hear in the comments how you grow your peppers, if you pinch your peppers, if you pull off your flowers, if there's something else or any other hints or tricks that you like to use to grow better peppers. We've been growing them for several years, and we've grown them all sorts of ways, in pots, in raised beds, in the ground, and every year we change it up a little bit. This is the first year that we're growing on a cattle panel trellis, and the first year that we're growing them in weed fabric. So we're gonna see how that goes. I think it'll go well. Last year we did the Florida weave on the peppers and that went well, but this is just something that is more permanent for that. And then also last year we didn't have the weed fabric in these when we planted them, and the weeds just totally took over. So I'm really looking forward to spending much less time weeding. But I hope you enjoyed that. And again, like I said, I'd love to hear any tips or tricks that you have for planting peppers. There's always room to grow, room to learn more things, room to experiment, and every year's different. So hoping for a good pepper year, and I'm ready to see what these things do. Thanks for coming along. Have a great day.